Okay. Hi there, my name's Charlie Cooper. I'm Politico's senior energy correspondent. Welcome to those of you just joining us online and to everyone in the room with us here today in Brussels. We've had some fascinating discussions already today about the energy crisis Europe is experiencing and the future of sustainable energy on the continent. Now we're going to hear from somebody who's been right at the center of what has been an historic time for the EU's energy policy. Energy Commissioner Kadri Simson, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. Before we start, just a few housekeeping points. You can ask questions if you're viewing online or in the room only through the swap card platform, the instructions of which you can find on the website. Feel free to chat with fellow attendees and ask questions in the questions box to the right of the screen if you're on a desktop, and below the live stream if you're viewing on your mobile. But without further ado, Commissioner Simpson, thank you very much for joining us today. We are here. It is the first winter of the energy crisis. Have you turned your heating on at home yet?
Yes, I have. I have done so with mild temperatures, but I think that it is very important to remind to everyone that if we can save energy, then we should do so, because we don't want to end up in a situation where in the end of winter our storages are empty and we don't know how to replace Russian gas, because right now we still receive some of it.
Have you turned the thermostat down at all, or what measures are you taking to save energy in your own life?
Actually, I do live in an apartment where I can choose temperature for each room, and I heat only the main room.
Okay. It's been the topic for all of this year. The winter is coming. How will the EU cope now that we are here? How confident are you that every EU country can get through this winter without experiencing shortages?
Under these current circumstances, I think that we have done almost maximum to be better prepared for this winter. Our underground gas storage is still more than 93% full. Our gas consumption is down, as it was agreed in the middle of the summer, and we have been able to diversify supplies. So the latest data shows that by the end of October, we received 32 billion cubic meters more LNG and 18 billion cubic meters more pipeline gas for other sources than Russia. And that is the reason why I do believe that we are prepared, but that doesn't mean that we should be careless how we consume gas, because if we will be able to leave some volumes in underground gas storage, it makes it easier for next filling season to reach our goals.
Absolutely. We'll come to next year and the dangers ahead then as well in a moment. I know these things can't be predicted with a huge degree of certainty sometime, but how would you rate the risk of blackouts in an EU country or in several EU countries, a kind of scale of risk, very low to very high? Could you put a sort of a term on it like that?
As you know, we do have a policy in place that some of the gas consumers are protected customers, households, but also now the power plants that need gas to produce electricity. And that means that we have done our part to avoid that possible gas crisis or alert level, if it is needed to be triggered, will not trigger blackouts in electricity markets. So power plants that do need to use gas will be provided by necessary gas, but we need to save gas wherever we can, and that was also one of the reasons in September why energy ministers agreed that we will also cut our electricity consumption at price peak hours, because these are the hours where gas-fired power plants are necessary.
That's one of the things that has been decided this year by the EU, help for citizens and for businesses in that regard. Here in Brussels last week, we had the latest extraordinary energy council, although it does seem like the extraordinary ones happen more often than the ordinary ones at the moment. The council failed to reach agreement on the Commission's proposal of a market correction mechanism. This is commonly known as the gas price cap. What went wrong?
You cannot expect that ministers only after 2 days receiving the proposal will be able to find an agreement. So this has not happened since the crisis started. And despite the fact that we have had already 10 council meetings, ministers are delivering council by council. Just looking back what we have done this year, there is a long list of emergency temporary measures agreed. There are also legislative pieces that will help us to achieve medium-term targets, and some of the measures were heavily disputed, but in the end we found a solution that all the ministers were able to support. And I think that, for example, if Commission would have proposed a measure that all the member states have to cut gas consumption by 15% a year ago, then ministers would have reacted that this is outrageous. How can we ask something like that? And it took less than a week in the middle of the summer when agreement was reached. So this is the same approach now. Ministers are discussing, and overall last week what I saw wide support to the fact that Commission made a proposal, that there is now solid mechanism how to tackle possibly very high gas prices. And ministers, of course, do have the right to discuss the parameters, how it will be triggered, at what level, and what kind of flexibility this spread between TTF and LNG markets has to provide.
So those are the areas that are being looked at in terms of a revised proposal, because the proposal that did come through, it wasn't just about the fact there wasn't much notice before the Energy Council. It was, rejected by all sides, those who are in favour of gas price caps and those who are against. I mean, were you disappointed by the response? Do you feel like the Commission owes member states an apology for how this has all played out? Because it's been a long and difficult process. Would you agree?
The year of 2022 has been so far very difficult. And of course, all these proposals, before we make them, we consult. And even under huge time pressure, we try to analyze and receive some feedback from stakeholders. What might be the consequences if we will implement these measures? And as you very well know, even EUCO warned us that we have to make a proposal that will not trigger the situation where European Union will lose some necessary LNG cargoes to other world regions. And we should also keep in mind that this proposal, if it will be triggered, this mechanism will still allow internal gas flows inside the EU.
I mean, those are almost contradictory instructions. A gas price cap that can never really be triggered because of all those caveats around it. Was that a frustration for you to be given such difficult instructions to work with?
This was not our aim to propose something that will be never triggered. And even these levels, the price level of 275, we saw this level in August.
Also, but not for 2 weeks.
Also the spread of 58, it was also there. Indeed, not for 2 weeks. And now we have to discuss how long can we wait if a similar situation repeats itself. Do we have time? Do we have patience to wait for 2 weeks? Is it a week? Is it shorter time period? And these are the discussions.
Are these discussions for ministers now? Is the Commission saying it's up to you now?
We provide them all the necessary analysis and explain also what are the risks if we will trigger this mechanism, for example, too often. But I think that it is also important that we will keep this possible safeguard that if in real life, and this kind of mechanism has never been in place in Europe,
sure.
If in real life it actually has a consequence that we will not receive LNG from other market regions, then we will have a right to suspend it immediately.
Let's move on from the gas price cap because there is a lot else going on. You mentioned earlier 2023, the year coming, and the dangers to the EU's energy supply then. We had Fatih Birol from the IEA here earlier. He said, prepare yourself for next winter, it will be much more difficult. You mentioned how you're feeling about the coming winter and the risks there. How confident are you that the EU will be able to refill those gas storages come next winter?
I agree with Dr. Birol. Of course, next year will be as challenging as this one. We started our preparations for this winter already in January because nobody gives us guarantees how long Russia will supply some of the gas. They still supply some gas via Ukrainian and Turkish route, and so far we have lost 60 billion cubic meters of Russian gas, which we have been able to replace with alternative suppliers or by saving gas. That means there is much more to lose, and that was the basis and main reason behind our REPowerEU plan. Everybody knows it's not feasible to replace 100% Russian gas with alternatives, and this has never been our plan. We will not increase our gas consumption. We will replace some of the Russian gas with LNG and other pipelines shipments. Then we will save. Where we cannot save, we will use fuel switch, and this is the reason why now we need to accelerate renewables deployment, because it makes sense to replace fossil fuels with renewables instead of switching back from gas to coal.
I believe before you've said that next winter would be worse than this year. Now saying as bad. Has your confidence about next winter increased recently, and if so, why?
If we're talking about winter that starts November 2023,
yes,
then we are already preparing for that. One of the reasons why we are advocating savings and energy efficiency right now, at the moment where our underground gas storage is full and in some regions there are LNG shipments easily available, is because of the fact that we cannot deplete our underground gas storage. It has to remain half full. At least it shouldn't be completely at very low levels across Europe. And that is the reason why saving gas is necessary already in November 2022.
I want to ask you also about your visit earlier this month to Ukraine. You met with President Zelensky. You saw firsthand the emergency situation that the country is facing with regards to its energy supply. I know you're in pretty regular contact with the government there. What's the latest you're hearing about the situation that citizens in Ukraine are facing going into winter?
I was visiting Kiev in the beginning of November. Then Russia already started their campaign and missile attacks and drone attacks against civil infrastructure. We all know their aim is to cause immense human suffering. And already then in Kiev, their only option was to introduce rolling blackouts. These are still there. Rolling blackouts, 14 districts out of 27. People are disconnected. Altogether, 10 million Ukrainians do not have electricity. And that means that, of course, we have to support Ukraine with air defense. But even if it's so easy for Russians to destroy civil infrastructure, we have to do all that we can to restore it. One good thing is that since Ukraine and Moldova are synchronized with our electricity grid, actually we can help them to restore the grid balance. And unless they would have been synchronized with us already since March, after Russian attacks, there would be right now total and continuous blackout. So we can help also in these regions where grid is destroyed with generators. We have provided hundreds of diesel generators in different sizes. And this is a little bit more challenging to find from Europe. Substations and auto transformers, but we have also reached out to our international partners for producing them. So it doesn't matter that Russia might destroy another heating plant or a substation tomorrow. we will help Ukrainians to build it up. Otherwise, you will not survive in Ukraine without heat and access to electricity.
How did it make you feel, that trip, going and seeing the situation there firsthand? How did you come away feeling?
Ukrainian leadership starting with President Zelensky, but also Energy Minister German Galushenko, they are working day and night to keep up the spirit and even all the energy experts or engineers at the field. My strong feeling was that Russian attacks will not make them change their mind. They are fighting for their independence, and they are ready to get through this winter, even if there is no basic access to energy, because they know why they are doing that. Of course, there is another big challenge for Ukrainians, for us. This is Russian military occupying Europe's biggest nuclear power plant in Zaporozhye. We all know that this is against all the civil nuclear safety or security agreements and rules, and that firsthand we have to get them out, Russians military out from nuclear power plant in an orderly manner, but then we have to open also these international agreements, because this kind of behavior should not be left unpunished.
When you speak to President Zelensky, to the Ukrainian energy minister, what do they say to you about the fact that Europe is still consuming a significant amount of Russian fossil fuels, that European countries are still paying into Russian companies and therefore indirectly fueling the Russian war effort? I mean, I know that pipeline gas has been down drastically, of course, that's the context for everything we're speaking about. But Russian LNG is up this year into Europe, 46%. What do they say to you about European continued consumption of Russian fossil fuels? And what would be your message to those countries that are actually increasing imports of Russian LNG?
We discussed sanctions, and we discussed what is the impact of the Russian economy and what else EU can do to respond to these atrocities that Russia is committing right now. And on LNG, I have also addressed energy ministers and warned them that their companies, mainly in Western Europe or in Iberian Peninsula, buying Russian LNG, should face reputational risks. Because if we are talking about LNG, then this is really not a matter of need. You can easily buy also LNG from other global producers, and this 5 billion cubic meters that Russia has shipped to Europe on top of last year's volumes, this is not coming under the long-term contracts. So I think that until we don't have in place sanctions on Russian gas, we should send clear signals to our market participants that find other alternatives. Don't pay Russians the spot market price.
So the French government, the Spanish government, the Belgian government, the Dutch government should be telling their companies, do not buy Russian LNG.
Exactly. These are not governments who are buying. These are companies who are making business decisions. But as it happened with our oil imports, majority of the European companies, they are not buying crude oil from Russia already since months. And this is next Monday, and we will not buy it at all.
Yes, I was going to come to that actually. The Russian oil embargo on seaborne oil comes in on Monday. There was something supposed to happen at the same time, which is the G7 Russian oil price cap. I know that's not specifically within your file, but EU countries are talking about that as we speak. There's a proposal of a price cap of $62 per barrel on Russian oil on the table. But several countries, Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, and indeed Ukraine, want a lower price cap to really hurt Moscow's oil revenues. Are those countries wrong to want a tougher price cap? We
know that lower the level is for this price cap, the smaller are revenues for Russian budgets. So this is absolutely understandable. And we have to keep in mind also that these measures, this price cap, will be effective when we have a broader coverage. That means when all G7 participants, and together with G7 also EU27, will agree on the concrete price level.
Okay. I think we are coming to the end of our time, so I wanted to open up 4 questions and maybe come back for a couple more at the end. We have one on the app from a Simon Hobson. It doesn't say where he's from, but Simon asks, regardless of Russia weaponizing energy, LNG is the only bridge between now and a carbon-free economy. Does the EU regret failing to support the continent embracing the fracking industry?
As I was mentioning earlier, step by step, by reaching our higher renewable targets, our need for natural gas will decrease. This year, unfortunately, this is not energy crisis due to the supply or demand. This is energy crisis due to the war, Russian war on Ukraine, and due to the Russian war on energy on Europe. So these are extraordinary times. And my task is to keep energy ministers and EU27 united so that we can support Ukraine.
We've talked a lot about oil and gas and energy security, of course. Energy security also means renewables for the future. I mentioned we had Fatih Birol here earlier. He said that the crisis we're experiencing is accelerating that energy transition. He said that the IEA have some new figures coming out soon that show incredible increases in renewables in the EU. Is it time, do you think, for the EU to look at raising its climate targets, given how the whole context has changed? There is this recognition that renewable energy is not just a climate issue, it's an energy security issue. So is it time to raise those targets?
We have done so, and we are negotiating
but
higher targets for 2030. On top of that, each and every member state will next year upgrade their national energy and climate plans. If you look at recovery plans, this is a significant share of recovery funds that will be dedicated for energy-related investment. And we have also already witnessed a record year for EU solar. So 2022 brought to the market 40 gigawatts of new installations. And there is lots of excitement on new technologies too. So via Innovation Fund, we have supported our industry and also future projects to produce more and significant volumes of green hydrogen. So this is one of the main priorities of ours, together with savings, energy efficiency.
Okay. We have one more question on the app from an audience member. Henrik Leitenberger asks, are there any updates with a view to the preparations for the internal electricity market rules reform? Slightly technical question there, but any updates on that?
I hope that after a couple of weeks, when we will meet again with energy ministers, I do have a document, not ready, but document that ministers can discuss, and after that we will have a short stakeholders consultation based on my knowledge. We will present electricity market design as a legislative proposal by the end of March.
Okay. I think we talked about the risks next year in 2023. Just finally, we talked a lot about the impact on citizens, I think, this year. Businesses sometimes, I think, feel like the focus has not been enough on them. Energy-intensive industries are facing extremely high energy prices, that there is a fear it will make them less competitive against the US, against other global global economic rivals. Do you think these industries need more support?
I do, and my colleagues in Commission do believe that too. This is one of the reasons why we extended a temporary state aid framework. Saying that, I also recognize that energy prices here in Europe are significantly higher than in the United States. They are producing more gas than they consume. That is one of the explanations. But we are investing a lot into new technologies, and I strongly believe that our Green Deal was and is our growth strategy, and there is advantage for first movers. So if we can support our industry to uptake more innovative solutions, then this might not be seen as advantage today, but in the medium run, being innovative brings benefits.
Commissioner Simpson, I'm afraid we are at the end of our time. There's so many more questions I would like to ask you, but we have to stick to the schedule. So thank you very much for joining us today. I know you've got to get away. That does actually bring to an end the energy segment of the Sustainable Future Week, which means it's time for me just to quickly thank our partners who are making this summit possible. That's leading partners Coca-Cola in Europe, GE, SQM, our presenting partners Braskem, Cefic, Google, MAN Truck and Bus, Ørsted, PepsiCo and PGE, and our networking partners Chiesi and 3M. Thank you very much to all of them. It is now, for those in the room, time to break for lunch. So you have an hour and 15 minutes to take a breather, get some food, and then we return at 2:30 with the next segment of the week, which is all about tech, unleashing tech to reach climate neutrality. That will be started by my colleague Peter Ack, who will be leading a panel discussion on tech and sustainability. So thank you very much once again, Commissioner Simpson, for coming today. Thank you.